Welcome to Directionally Correct, a PEO's podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Jennifer Hanniman, Vice President of Professional Services at PeopleInsight in our HR Tech Voices series.
Hey, Directionally Correct fans. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, watch our videos on YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. We are a listener-supported podcast, so please consider becoming a patron. If you'd like to support the podcast by becoming a patron, you can find a link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for being a listener. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
Where are you located?
I'm in a small town called Heerlen in the Netherlands. So in southern Netherlands.
Okay, so like the Hague. You're by the Hague, sort of?
I'm about 2 hours south of The Hague. I am half an hour from where Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands meet. So I am very close to the German and Belgian border, but 2.5 hours from Amsterdam. Yeah.
I love me some Netherlands talk. I mean, we could do this for the entire time if you want to.
Oh, I live here, so yeah.
I love like going through and like watching all the people on the bicycles and all the different kinds of bicycles.
Oh yeah, I spend a lot of time on a bike here, way more than I did back in Canada. Yeah, but it's all through the winter. Really, here it's just set up for it, right? It's separate lanes. You feel so safe. You do have to learn kind of the rules of the road, but I've got my electric Dutch bike, so it's pretty sweet going around town here.
Do you listen to the podcast while you're on the bike?
Yes, I do. I love listening to podcasts on the bike. And imagine, like, when the weather was sunny out, I actually hop on my bike, and in this part of the Netherlands, there's a lot of farmland. So within 5 minutes, I'm literally out in farmland, biking to a castle, listening to, the podcast, listening to you guys chat, learning a little bit more about analytics.
I think the nerdery just hits different when you're next to a windmill, right?
It's pretty sweet. It's really sweet. Yeah. Or when you're passing, fields of cows or sheep or something, and strolling up to that castle. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Colt making killer points about historical IO figures here. Look at that cow. Look at these wooden shoes.
Yes, I don't know. Well, Jennifer, we appreciate you joining us for our inaugural HR Tech Voices episode, and want to say thank you to PeopleInsight for being a part of that. Can you tell us, what is PeopleInsight and what's your role there?
PeopleInsight is analytics platform that provides prepackaged HR people analytics, specifically geared towards companies that would be between 500 to 5,000 in size. So what we're very, very good at is helping companies who have struggled to put together an analytics solution to be able to get up and running quickly. And then once we hit them up and running, one of the other things that we do is work with them very closely to constantly evolve their analytics. So it's not just a tool that they have in order to do their analytics. We actually consider the analysts, the relationship that we have with our customers, to be really, really important part of the equation to really help that specific size customer be able to really leverage the analytics that they have.
You're talking about companies this small, they need a lot of hand-holding, right? They probably haven't dipped their toes too deep into this yet, and they probably need some little guidance here.
They need guidance, and frankly, they've gotten to the point where, spreadsheets just don't cut it anymore. They're trying to use the reporting that exists within the platforms that they've invested in, which is, a fairly significant investment for their budget. And then they really just don't have the skill set yet in-house or the budget to build out an analytics platform, the data warehouse, the data management, the data governance, all of that on top of the visualizations, and train a team in how to use them. So the entire end-to-end process is a bit of a barrier for them, even though they really understand the need for analytics. They need it to do their job, and then they're just hitting these barriers that are really hard to overcome.
It's got to be a sad day when you realize your Excel sheet just like isn't cutting it anymore. That with like a formula and a spreadsheet. Oh, dang it. We got to do something else.
Yeah. When yes, this the moment you're like, man, I really wish I could combine these two data sources together. And you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get there and do that. Or I need to do trending. Like, I just need to trend some data.
Yeah. Let's say the organizations hit the fateful day. They've started to outgrow their spreadsheets. They decide that they find PeopleInsight.
Yeah.
How did they get started with you? And what is it that you guys are bringing to the table that's going to help them kind of get from point A to point B? And I guess, like, what is point B that they're going to get to?
Yeah. So they get started with us by providing us their HR data. And we have different ways that we can connect into HR data depending on the source. But, we work with them to figure out what's the simplest, easiest way to get us the data. Get us your data. We transform that data in our data now we run a ton of tests on that data for data quality. And then we stand up a set of dashboards. And we can do that really quickly. Now, within a week, we're getting dashboards in front of them. And that's kind of the starting point of the discussion. So they get a set of standard dashboards, whether their focus is HR or talent acquisition, somewhere in the spectrum. We have standard dashboards for the whole gamut of the space in HR or in people analytics. But we will focus then on having the discussions. Okay, what are your priorities? Where do you need to focus? What are the elements of analysis that you need to do for your company? And once we send up those dashboards, we're working with them on a regular basis to tweak what they need in their company. So the initial output is a set of analytics. Sometimes they've never seen these kind of analytics before. And then from there, we look to hey, let's tailor this to the discussions you're having at your company for what you need for your business. So we kind of take it from there and tailor.
I love that consultative model, especially for like these smaller companies. It's smaller relatively, because like if you're at a large company and someone leaves, you're like, whatever. But if a key member leaves from a organization of 500, that could be devastating. You're doing the Lord's work. That's what I'm saying, Jennifer.
Yeah. And I thought, well, thank you. No, I think, what makes me, I mean, I've been with the company for the last decade. And one of the reasons why the company was founded, and it does have this consulting model, is the initial founders came from Accenture, came from the world of consulting and the world of analytics, and saw the need, to help people along. Like, it's not good enough to just give them a tool. They need to be able to know how to use it, apply it, bring it into the fold. And when you're 500 to 5,000, it's a steep learning curve. And, to get all the pieces together to put it in place is very challenging. So that's really where the evolution of the product came from, was that kind of consulting background of the.
You're doing all the right things, like eating clean and staying active, but nearly all of us are still missing a key piece: minerals. Concentrate's Daily Mineral Powder helps restore what your body's not getting, supporting mood, energy, immunity, and nervous system balance. It's made from ionic trace minerals your body actually absorbs, and comes in 3 delicious flavors: blue raspberry, blue Hawaiian, and blue acai. Because your body can't make minerals, and modern food and water don't supply enough, start with minerals. Start with Concentrates. Find it now at traceminerals.com.
Founders.
I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there, obviously. And HR data tends to be like really sensitive. Like, I assume it's very privacy strict guidelines to get this data in, because you are giving up data from your company and put it into an external source.
Yes. So when you think, actually, this will lend to another question where people may ask, why haven't they heard of us before? We've been around for a little while. Why haven't they heard of us? We spent a lot of time at the very beginning investing in that infrastructure for security and privacy. So we're SOC 2 certified. We meet the requirements of companies like Okta, like ClickUp, like KPMG Canada. So we worked very hard to get that trust in place. Like, trust is so important in what we deliver. To get that fundamental trust in place with the customers, that was one of our key areas of investment as we started to grow our business.
Yeah, it's table stakes, right?
Yeah.
Table stakes. It's really important that they trust us with their data, and it's really important that they trust the data that we're delivering on the other side. If they're looking at a dashboard, can they trust that we've analyzed it correctly and we're giving them accurate results? Because then they have to go and take that and stand up to it, right? Stand by it.
So can they trust it?
They definitely. I think the other area that we invest in, that if you're doing a calculation and ROI on, where to invest, or do I build it myself or buy it myself, is how do I maintain this data integrity? Because there's a lot of places within HR data that have, weak links in the chain, let's say. So as part of building out the platform, when customers give us their data, it's going through a slew of automated tests. Every time they give us the data, we run the same set of tests, and we've tailored the tests to their data. So it's not this generic set that, their rule XYZ won't get caught. So we are, really focused a lot on making sure that we have repeatable, scalable testing throughout the entire process, which means we catch things in their data, we catch things in their processes that may, before they might even know they're a problem internally, which I think is great. And it's one of the wonderful things in working with our customers is they actually look to us to say, hey, can you help us flag when this scenario happens? Because you found it the first time and it shouldn't be happening in the data, right? So we work very closely with the data integrity.
That's really awesome. Like, as someone who's worked deeply with flat files in the past, yes, it's very company specific, and sort of different sort of combinations of variables either should or should not be happening.
Yeah.
And when they do happen, yes, and the fact that you can tailor this service to a variety of different clients is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will tell you this, I'm going to give you an example. We had a client who actually left us because their company said, hey, we've made this huge investment in this workforce system, and we want you to leverage the reporting within the system that we have. And I remember having the conversation with them and saying, are you sure? Because we have a million rules behind the scenes to flag anomalies in your process and account for them in the analytics you see. And they're like, we have to. Corporate directive. It happens. Left on great terms. A year later, they're back because they could not move forward, right? They could not do it themselves. And that to me was it hit me hard in the feels, that one, because it was great that they could actually, they saw the value where they were using us, but they were concerned about the bigger investment they made. And then they realized, actually, we're going to have to invest more if we try to do it ourselves, even with the tools that we have. So,
yeah. Well, let me dig into that, because you mentioned decision rules that you guys have a million of them. I'm assuming that's a little hyperbolic, but I'll take it at face value. And then you have these nudging mechanisms or these identification mechanisms when you find faulty data. How are you guys utilizing AI as a part of that process, maybe on the back end for data, but also on the front end for customers who are using your product?
So on the back end, I would say a lot of the rules are not necessarily AI driven. They're based on automations that we put in place using technologies that existed for a while. On the front end, though, we are definitely using AI in order to help surface results out to the customers in different ways. So,
Like how do small companies like get started with AI and people analytics? Because I'm sure that's the conversation you're having quite often.
yes. So, if they want to get started with AI analytics, I think it starts with, well, how can AI help you the most? Like, where are you having your most struggles in consuming analytics within your workforce? So, for example, are you having trouble getting reach of analytics in your organization? So, you've made it available to all your recruiters, or you've made it available to all your leaders or all your HRBPs, but they're not using it because they're overwhelmed a little bit when they come in and see some dashboards and don't know how to filter and do all these things. Can we use conversational AI, which is built into PeopleInsight, so that they can come in and say, hey, I just want to know what the turnover is for sales. And can we prompt them to say, hey, that's great, but we're going to need a time frame on top of that, because you want turnover for since the beginning of time, for the last quarter of last year. So that sort of conversational AI to get, if you're having trouble with reach, that's where AI is going to help you. If you're wanting to help surface out and identify anomalies in the data and be able to then understand the driving factors behind the data, then it's still available within the product, but it's a different, it's a diagnostic, using diagnostic techniques to get there. So, we are providing the diagnostic capabilities so that we're helping, again, these small, medium-sized businesses who struggle with time and don't have time to dig through the data and don't necessarily have the skill set in-house definitely don't have the data scientists in-house to start building out advanced algorithms or leverage AI to kind of suss out what's happening. We're trying to surface here's things that you should be paying attention to, and here's why they're happening as well.
So, like, what you just described, there's like a really cool feature. I assume a lot of these companies don't have research scientists either that can go in and like figure out, the trends in attrition or whatever. But what you're saying is that like a HRBP, whomever from that company can go in and just talk to the data and be like, okay, how are we doing the past 3 years as far as regretted attrition or what promos for whomever?
Yes. And I think that's really powerful, right? Because maybe you guys can tell me if you've heard this, like one of the challenges that we see in getting people analytics out there more outside of the people analytics team is that the barrier of understanding what the numbers mean. It's outside of someone's process. How many times have you heard, because I've heard it many, hey, I've given the HRBPs exactly what they needed and they're still not using the dashboards, or I've given the recruiters or the leaders. And this gives them a way to connect on a different level with the analytics, the external groups outside of the people analytics team.
I had an epiphany this week, and I was, for whatever reason, I was at Home Depot, or we'll call it a tool store, a hardware store, as some people might call it. But anyway, I was like just kind of lamenting the fact that like in my 20s I'd have to go to the cable store and like give them a check, then I have to go to the electric company and give them a check, and then I have to go to the telephone place, give them a check. I don't do any of that anymore, and it's all because the internet and technology has freed up time to where I don't have to do this anymore.
Right.
And I think this is what they talk about, like the power of AI. Like it gives you back the freedom to not do this sort of menial task that you don't want to do. In the same way, like you allow people to just talk to the data. They don't have to make a formula. They don't have to, be a data science expert. You just like conversationally talk to it. I think it's really fascinating.
I love that Scott discovered the internet this week. That's really cool. I'm proud of
the internet. It was a time free, because we always talk about, hey, this is going to free you up to do other things. Yeah. But I don't think you actually see it until you look back in time. Like, oh yeah, that really fucking sucked.
Yeah.
Doing all that stuff.
Remember when I cobbled all those spreadsheets together and tried to make, it is one of those, I think that's where there's many use cases out of just people analytics where AI will have that impact where it really saves time and being able to do certain activities. But I also see it as lowering the barrier.
Yeah, absolutely.
In getting access to some of the information. Now, there's still an important factor in that people need to understand when they're asking for certain analytics, what does it actually mean? Can they interpret it? Can they then take action from it? I think it's going to be a really important part of it as well. And that's where, being able to surface insights contextually with context around it so that they're understanding it means, your turnover spiked last month. You should, and these are the driving factors we see, you should be investigating this to take some action. There's ways to make it help them understand how to explore the data as well. And I think that's really important.
Well, I think like if you go upstream of that, what you're really saying is you have to know what is the right problem to solve so that you can contextualize the data to understand the said problem. So I guess the question I have for you is like, how do you know what the right problem to solve is? And like, how do you use PeopleInsight to unearth that?
I think, so to know the right problem to solve, to me, fundamentally starts with understanding the priorities of your business, right? And then focusing in on, where does our people strategy fit in meeting the priorities of the business? And therefore, what analytics do I need to make sure my people strategy can meet the priorities of the business? It really goes back fundamentally to what are the business questions? What is the business trying to do? And how can I focus my analytics? So, for example, if you're a growing biotech company, like if you're not looking at talent acquisition, if you're not looking at your quality of hire, your first year turnover rates, you're not looking at, and you're focusing on like tenure analysis, you're probably not in the right space, right? Like, so how do you want to look at where your business is focused and how your analytics can help support the discussions you really need to have with the business around your people strategy. And that's where, fundamentally where you want to start. And then you want to use the analytics to show, to understand, is there a problem here? How are we what's our trend showing? Have we moved the needle? Like the investment we made in our people, is it actually making the intended difference that we thought it was? Our investment in retention programs and training and development and this and that, are we seeing the effects that we expected when we invested in those programs?
I got this weird metaphor in my mind. And I know like war analogies are overused and everything, but I imagine, all these soldiers lining up in like an 1800 style war, and they get to the battlefield and they're all there with their muskets and their outfits that look all shiny, and no one's on the other side of the battlefield for them to fight. Yeah. It's like, oh, we got all the right stuff. We're focusing on the wrong problem. It's like there's no one there to cover, to be on the other side of the equation.
Yeah, and it can mean that the challenge then becomes you've spent all this time building out a conversation that you don't really need to have, or a different one than you wanted to have, right? And I think of another example, like engagement surveys where, and again, you guys tell me if you've seen this scenario where like someone shows up and their deck is 15 slides of how they slice and dice. Yes, I was being nice with 15. Of here's all the ways we slice and dice the data. And yet the conversation really should be like, hey, how are we doing? Where do we have issues? And what actions can we take from that, right? Instead of the entire methodology of the survey and, showing all the hard work that was done, which is definitely done, but not the conversation you want to have.
Yeah, some people need to learn what an appendix is. Yeah.
This is the cool thing about, I think, your platform, where it really democratizes the data. Anyone can go in and check it out. It's not just like the view of like one researcher.
No.
Everyone can go in and look at it. And they can build their own 25-page slide deck, whatever they want to do.
They definitely can. Well, I think the other value of partnering and our platform, and I'm obviously very biased about it, but one of the big values of it is like, if you look at the process to get from that data dump to getting to those meaningful discussions where you're using analytics to make actual insights, the amount of steps you have to do, transform the data, and HR, we could probably do a whole topic on how hard it is to transform HR data. it's, I think, more challenging than most data sets within an organization. Get that quality data, deal with all the data quality issues, and there are likely some. Get visualization tools in place. All that stuff we handle. We handle the plumbing and the help with the presentation and get all that out to them so they can focus on, hey, what questions do I need to ask? And where do I have these discussions take place?
Yeah.
And most people can't get past that initial hurdle, right? Most of smaller companies can't get past that.
When I know you started your career in consulting doing systems implementations, and like this is like the number one reason system implementations fail is because they can't get the right data, they can't get the right infrastructure, they can't get the right integrity. So I know you've got to have an appreciation for how important that is. What's that like, having done that earlier in your career and then seeing the evolution of technology implementation over time?
It's interesting because the more things change, the more things stay the same a little bit, right? Like I was implementing PeopleSoft and SAP HR systems, and like will date me, converting mainframe into PeopleSoft systems, but yet the problems remain the same. Like if you try to implement today, it's, hey, garbage in, garbage out. How do we get the right processes in place so that we're actually leveraging the technology properly to optimize what we're trying to do and then be able to report it on the other side? And I think what I love in the new technologies, the new platforms, is they really help customers get there in a much easier way because they have these built-in infrastructures that support the processes they have in place. But people still need to understand what they're configuring when they're configuring. And oftentimes, if they're not fully understanding it, then they still come out with these issues at the other end with they didn't capture the data the way they thought, or it's not doing what they expected. And unfortunately, if you're not thinking about what you want to report on as you're designing and configuring the system, you could hit a challenge. You could hit a challenge later on. And I also know from large scale system implementations, the first thing that gets cut is the analytics and reporting modules, right? They get pushed to phase 2, phase 3.
Oh.
And so, yeah, because you got to get the system in and you got to get the data in before you can do all the other fun stuff. So oftentimes that does get pushed, which then, you're turning a system live and you're lacking in some of the basic reporting that you wanted to have in place to go forward. So
you built the massive system, but we forgot to include any outcome variable. Great.
They may have them. They may have not had time to do something about them, right? And that's one of the bigger challenges, right? The time it takes to kind of implement, which is one of the things where, so going back again to that experience, how does it lend now? Like one of the elements of the platform right from the beginning was we need to get things in front of customers as soon as possible. This can't be an 8-month implementation to get their data. Because even if the data isn't 100%, and no one's ever is great, like 100%, some have better data than others, but even if the data isn't perfect, you need to see it and work with it and evolve from there. And you can't do that if you're waiting 6 months, 8 months to get up and running, right? The sooner the better.
Oh, this isn't a gotcha question. It's just like a wildly curious question. Like you're based in the Netherlands. I assume like you have a fairly global organization or a global reach anyway. We have a new administration in the US, which is kind of changing political sort of realms across the globe. How are y'all thinking about GDPR and like the different AI sort of laws in the US versus Europe versus, I don't even know what's going on in Asia. How are y'all thinking about the differences in how you can apply this data across the globe?
So I would say, yes, I'm located in the Netherlands, but I'm sort of solo out here because I opportunistically moved here because my husband had an opportunity to teach at an international school. So we are focused on the North America market. Now, we have global companies that we deal with. So we understand what the privacy laws are for the different companies, and then we work with the companies to make sure that we're applying the GDPR rules appropriately for what they need. Like in some companies, for example, especially if they have European offices, they may require that data get removed from databases within a specific time frame. So we just basically work with them to make sure that we're adhering to their GDPR policies or the policies that are there. So we have no problem working in that environment. It's just it's a matter of just keeping on top of what those requirements are.
Ever changing, absolutely.
It is, yes, it is ever changing. The rules that are.
That's an interesting point, Scott. I hadn't really thought about that. Like, is it even possible nowadays to have like a global standard for your AI product? And I think the answer is probably no.
You can't even. What New York has laws. I mean, that's internal to the U.S.
Yeah.
Like, across the U.S.
Yeah, you really have to consider what are the implications when you're deploying the different AI components to a global organization, and understand what their limitations may be.
Well, Jennifer, do you want to join us in the confusion matrix?
Yeah, sure.
The confusion matrix.
Jennifer, welcome to the confusion matrix. Okay, we love giving people choices. So you can. This is where your roads diverge. You can either take option 1, pick a number, where you will pick another number, and like we will talk about that topic, or option 2, I choose. I may even choose pick a number. I don't know.
I think you only have one choice. It sounds like.
I know. I think I have to pick a number. I'm trying to pick a number. I think that's what I have to go with.
Is that what you're going for? Is that going to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's a bold choice. I see how it is. I see how it reminds me of when I was a wee lad and I went to grad school. I started out in the counseling program.
Oh.
And it took me about 2 weeks to figure out that that's not what I want to do for my life. But throughout that first quarter, they had me go to a counselor and interview them, just kind of like a job talk sort of thing. But I walked in and this lady it's like a room that's probably 30 feet long and 10 feet wide. So kind of long and skinny. But around the entire room was couches and chairs, various kinds. And I sat down in one chair and she's like, "Why'd you sit there?" I was like, because it's this comfy seats. Oh, is that one too powerful for you over there? I was like, I'm just here for a job talk, man.
That's such a weird psychology question to be asking somebody.
I was like, come on, man. I'm not being therapized right now.
There's no validity in that assessment of your oh, this chair's too powerful.
Yeah, not one. Okay, you have 3 options. Please pick a number between 1 and 3.
2, right down the middle.
2. What's the strangest thing you believed in as a child that makes you laugh today?
Oh my goodness.
While you're thinking about it, the funny thing about this is you have no idea if he was going to give you that question no matter what. This is like the 3-card Monty from a magician's deck.
I didn't see the 3 cards with the 2, so I didn't see him flip it. So yeah, you're right.
I will say that the option that you turned down was Scott's choice, which was news. We would do news, but no, I want to know what you got as a child that makes you laugh. I don't have a good answer for this, by the way. I don't know.
I actually don't. I'm trying to think if there's anything, odd that I believed in other than Santa Claus and definitely the Tooth Fairy. And
I was thinking monsters. Monsters are probably not real.
Yeah.
What did you have a monster under the bed, or did you fully believe in it, or was it just kind of a tongue in cheek sort of believe in it,
or an imaginary friend?
Yeah.
So I definitely was a kid who would wake up scared there was something in the room. But other fact about me, I have a twin sister. And so we shared a room. So the 2 of us would wake up, one would wake the other one up and one would be scared and then the other one would get scared. And we were definitely one of those. I felt bad for my parents actually in retrospect.
This is a strong way to get individual rooms. Okay, we freak out so much that the parents just give us individual rooms.
Well, I'm curious about this. Are you one of those type of twins that if one gets hurt, the other one feels pain?
No. Okay. But we are identical twins, and we are.
Whoa! Really?
Mirror twins. So we're like 4% of the twin population is actually mirror, which means I'm left-handed, she's right-handed. So like looking in a mirror, we have
So wild.
our eyesight is flipped, that kind of thing. So yeah, so that is,
What causes that? It's like embryo split in the womb or something like that?
I don't know. I don't know what you have to do to get there, but it is, I think, like kind of a cool factor about being a twin is that little extra element of,
You guys would be unbeatable in one of those sack races where you had to put one leg in the middle, like,
it's,
because you're mirror images of one another, right?
yeah, exactly. So each one has our own strong leg. I never actually thought about that. We never did that. As a kids, we were very like on the same page. I wouldn't call it ESP or anything like that because I think it's just if you hang out with someone 24/7, which we did, you start to know each other so well. So playing Pictionary against us, yeah, no one's going to beat us because I could draw one line and an X and she'd be like, I think you're talking Mirage. It was we were in sync. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be infuriating to play you in Pictionary.
I mean, like, does your sister work for like the evil people analytics company or something? Like,
Well, she she went a very different direction in her career. She was one science. So she was a forensic scientist first in Canada and then she lives in the US and in the US. So she was a real life CSI. So her job was cooler than my job.
I mean, it doesn't sound that dissimilar to like digging through people data and discovering deep truth.
Yeah, yeah.
In the book I'm writing right now, I literally put a section in there called Forensic People Analytics, just to kind of put something provocative that I don't think most people have thought of. All right. I think that you're onto something. Maybe you are doing something similar.
Maybe that could be true, actually. And she does also have a recent degree in forensic genealogy. So there you're tracing people, lineage, and tying that. Yeah, so there could be some, I never thought of it that way before, actually, that there could be some ties. I always thought about her science, me math. So,
I would encourage you to read the book Connected by Fowler and Christakis. They have a whole like chapter dedicated to identical twins and a variety of the studies that have been conducted on them to better understand essentially how people connect socially. And it's sort of like your willingness to allow a friend on the left-hand side to your friend on your right-hand side to actually connect is genetically determined, essentially what they determine through these
whoa, that's cool.
your levels of altruism, all these sort of things. But like they kind of go deep, and like the twin studies are absolutely fascinating overall across psychology to dig out these deep truths. Because you're raised in the same environment, you're same genetically, you control for a lot of factors.
Are you guys the participants in that Minnesota twin study that's been going on for like 50 years?
No, we weren't. Well, she wasn't in the US then. And yeah, and we weren't the type of twins growing up that would ever wear the same clothes or do anything like that. In fact, we would make an effort to make sure we were not wearing even the same colors on a particular day.
You're like Patty Duke. You're like Patty Duke show. That's a deep cut. So.
One person has a mustache, the other one doesn't have a mustache. It's perfect. Yeah. Well, maybe that was a bad joke. Maybe we could do some nerdery. You want to join us in the nerdery, Jennifer?
Sure.
The nerdery. Awesome. All right. So the first article we've got today, and I apologize if you guys couldn't open it. When I found the article, it was not paywalled, and then it became paywalled, which was sort of frustrating. But it's called Reinventing the Organization for Gen AI and LLM. So this is by Ethan Mullock, again, another person that we've talked about a lot on the podcast, in the MIT Sloan Management Review. And again, I read this a few weeks ago. Couldn't read the whole thing now because of the paywall, but basically, he talked about how since 1855 was when the first modern organizational chart was built. And really, not much has changed in that respect in that amount of time, because thinking about like the traditional organizational structure was formulated post the Industrial Revolution. And his thesis is maybe that with the introduction of Gen AI and LLMs, for the first time, the traditional organizational chart and structure will no longer be necessary for organizations to be able to operate. And so being in the analytics space like we are, I thought this was fascinating in terms of the potential of, creating like self-organizing organizations and teams. How would you look at the data? Will things like O&A be the real organization chart of the future when you won't have an organization chart anymore? But I don't know if you guys got a chance to read this one, but what are your reactions in this one?
Well, he ain't wrong. We don't know what's going to happen with what this technology is going to do. There's already a hypothesis that it's going to flatten. A lot of organizations are going to get rid of a middle management layer, which in the past has been exceptionally critical to maintain the workers to the senior leaders, this sort of thing. I have been trying to push this idea of organizing organizations around social network findings for a while. I think it just makes sense to me. But
We'll talk more about that, Scott. Why does it make sense to you? And why should other people adopt it?
Well, Rob Cross has like a really good visual of this in his book. Essentially, the organizational hierarchy versus what the actual network looks like. And if essentially people are going to do what people are going to do, they're going to work with the people they need to work with. And if you can say all these people in area A of a network graph all work together through community detection or something like that, imagine just putting like one leader over them and saying like, okay, everyone in here is already working together. Let's just manage them as a group and we can control their all interests. We can move a lot faster because we don't need outside input from another leader, something like that. And you can do that for group B and C and D, where that may include several different traditional functions. So that could in theory be, we'll take a tech organization, engineering, or it could be, software or security or whatever. If you put that all under one function, you can move a lot quicker, solve problems for customers more quickly. I'm off the rails now. I
think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jennifer, do you have any thoughts? You've had a variety of experiences in your career.
Yeah, I actually think that in often cases, like in the world of software development, that grouping of people from different functions working together tends to happen in the product development lifecycle, right? If you're about to release a product, the marketing team works with the product team. So it does organize around a structure and you can release a product. What doesn't happen is how they're managed. And I think that's the interesting component. You're still managed in your own team, but yet you're working within you almost have this other different world that you're working in where you're working together to release out into the world. So I think it's kind of interesting to think of like, what if you just actually structured your organization that way instead of reporting up to the traditional means? So I think that's kind of cool.
And like, say, like if you're developing a piece of software, you're going to need security, you're going to need coding, you're going to need all the UI, you're going to need all these sort of things in there. And if they're all under different leaders, now you're talking about competing sort of interest here and competing timelines and level of interest and all this sort of stuff. If you just put that all under one leader, using network analytics, these people already work together. I think you move a lot faster.
Well, this is my thought, and I'm actually curious what you both think on this. Is the thought with like social network analysis, organizational network analysis, is you can look at the informal structures of an organization compared to the org chart, which is the formal structure of an organization. And my thought is like, okay, well, what if you just completely deconstruct the formal part of the organization? You just go with the informal part and you put managers there. How long until that just becomes the formal structure of the organization and new informal structures start to form? Like, is it just kind of a moving, kind of like a moving target?
Well, I mean, that's what I was describing exactly.
But meaning, like, at the end of the day, you still end up with that some level of hierarchical decision making.
Well, that's my point. Is like, okay, so let's say you get like a cross-functional team, like a product person, a marketing person, an engineering person, a salesperson. They all come together, and now you put a boss over that because they're working on that, and that becomes the new formal structure of the organization. Mm-hmm. What happens when they have to start competing with other teams like that? And then the incentives line up, and so then a new informal structure starts to get created.
in theory, they wouldn't have to compete with other teams because they'd all be, under one leader. Of course, like they're shifting priorities, like shifting customer needs.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be new projects coming down the pipe all the time, that sort of stuff, which would shift the network over time.
I think, like, if I'm correctly interpreting what you're both saying, like, actually, if you look at a company like IBM, that actually you do end up with these competing teams internally working towards each one of their own goals within this larger context of the bigger company and bigger goals. Meaning, when Cognos got acquired by IBM, the team that worked on analytics was created and worked on analytics projects. And then there was the team that worked on the information management side of the house, all the data warehousing projects. And then there's the team that works on the mainframe products. And inside of that, each one had all these roll-ups. And there was an internal sort of, I don't want to say competing for resources, because there's only a finite piece of the pies on IBM to kind of delve out. You know what I mean? So that structure, it was all teams kind of working together, all different parts of the organization. And then each one of them had their own, I wouldn't call it silo.
That's kind of where I was going with it, which is like, what I found in my career is that there's like a shortage of interesting problems, and therefore many different groups want to be the owner of said problem because they know that there's kind of glory and resources for helping fix that. And so you get the competition that occurs in those cases. But bring it back to the Ethan Mullick LLM article. Like, I think it's really interesting. I actually do think Gen AI and LLMs have the chance to kind of completely disrupt the organizational chart permanently. But if there's a counter argument to be had there, it's just that all the problems that you have with trying to formalize around informal structures are just going to create new formal structures and create new kinds of competition that haven't existed before, because human beings are always just going to be human. And so that's, I think, the counter argument I would make there.
And well, I mean, it's interesting. When I read the article, I thought this is an interesting idea and concept. And then I thought the takeaways at the end of the article had literally nothing to do with changing your org structure. They were more like how to get AI out into your workforce effectively. So it was kind of interesting where, at the end of the day, it's like, yes, maybe this could disrupt the organization, but we're still not at the place where we actually understand how to do that. So we have to think about baby steps. How do we even start to get AI out across the organization and use more broadly with guidelines and etc.
Like, that's my issue with the people who are like, all right, we got a little AI, now it's going to kill us all. I'm like, aren't there a few steps between what we have now and it's going to kill us all? Like, don't a few things need to happen? And it's like, unless you can outline what those few things are, which again, I think to your point, Jennifer, it doesn't really happen in the article. You have to, like, now we're just talking about like hopes and dreams about like what's going to occur. But I don't know. You have any final thoughts on that, Scott?
No, like look at the company Klarna this week. They went
Backtrack.
fully AI in their customer service organization, and customers revolted. So the owner, CEO, had a walk back on Tuesday saying, "We had an epiphany that human touch is never going to go away." But yeah, you went too hard on the AI. You went too hard on the AI. And people didn't like it because it really hurt your bottom line.
It's funny how that happens.
It's funny how on actual contact.
Without having that out of human contact, then you really quickly see the limitations of AI, right? I think that's the problem. You can't just, there may be a time when we can go fully AI and it's all good. But right now, the technology is definitely, in my experience, not there yet. You need the context. It can be helpful, but it doesn't replace.
Yeah, I heard someone lamenting the other day of seeing Gen AI writing and saying, like, I can spot this a mile away. What looks like Gen AI writing. And it does feel like impersonal. The quality is just different to it. Granted, like all the spelling errors have gone away and the grammatical mistakes are not there anymore. But there's something about the human touch or the phrasing of things. I think of like Ben Hogan, amazing writer, beautiful writer, that is being stripped away by using Gen AI.
Interesting. See, I know it's going to have achieved and surpassed human level of intelligence when it starts strategically misspelling words. That's when you know it's good.
Because it's trying to imitate a little bit more reality. Yep. Yeah.
You're using numbers and shit. What the hell's going on?
Well, Scott, do you want to hit us with the next nerdery article?
Yeah, where are you going to go? The dealer's choice.
I will say that the one with the 85 per 1 million was fascinating. I would love to talk
You
about
would do that one? Yeah, okay. So we all want to hire the best employees around, this sort of stuff. But, not everyone is a great candidate. So what they did, cognitive bias can take over, et cetera. So what this article did is examine 3 basic components to what is performance in the workplace. So intelligence, conscientiousness, and emotional stability. And they simulated, these all have like normal distribution. So they simulated the data on 20 million cases and then just did a random, or not a random, but a selection of how many people you can expect from various cuts. And essentially only about 16% of people achieved notable scores across all 3 dimensions. So essentially above the average, which makes sense. Like only 50% of people above the average. Now you take 2 cuts of that. Now you're down to like 25% essentially. But the overall finding is that only 85 out of a million were over 2 standard deviations across all 3 dimensions. So these findings have implications for like how you actually calibrate what you think is a quality candidate, etc. I have thoughts, but I'd love to hear y'all's first.
Well, let me jump in here because the reason why this is so interesting is so the implication is the three topics that they chose: intelligence, conscientiousness, and emotional stability. That the higher you are on those, the better, right? And I think that's probably true with intelligence. I don't know if it's necessarily true with conscientiousness. Like I think conscientiousness at the limit is like OCD, right? And emotional stability at the limit is like a robot. And so I'm not sure you actually want these 85 people out of a million necessarily, but I think the math behind it is what the most fascinating part is like, if you really want somebody who's world class, who's 2 standard deviations above the mean on one characteristic, it's like, okay, that's this percentage of the population. If you want somebody to be world class on 2 things, it's going to be this percentage. But if you want somebody to be world class on 3 things, that's like 85 out of a million. And I think that is such an interesting concept when you really think about it.
So what 2 standard deviations out is 95 percentile. So 5% of the population.
Yep.
Now
so 5% times 5% times 5% is 85 in a million.
You went to the exact place I did too. I was like, do you really want someone 2 standard deviations in conscientiousness? They would be fucking nightmare to work with. Like I'm really smart, and you gotta like get your TPS report perfect.
Yeah,
like,
you better not touch my pencil. That's all I'm saying. My pencils are in the exact order. I have them right the way that I want them. Do not touch my pencil. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jennifer?
I guess I looked at it and I was like, there's a couple of things that I kind of flagged in what they did in the study. First, it was like their definitions of how they came up for, what is intelligence and what conscientiousness and emotional stability were. I looked at like how would an HR person look to apply that? Because, for example, intelligence is like quite contextual to the work that you're doing, and they were using academic performance as a proxy for as an indicator for intelligence. But anyways, we could go down a path on that probably for really long. So I thought, while interesting, I wondered how this could be applied other than to say, hey, guess what? There's actually, you just have to be aware that that when you're assessing a candidate, that you're doing the right assessment to really understand when you're flagging them as exceptional, what a criteria are you actually using to flag that? Is your bias coming into play?
I think that's totally fair, especially for something like academic performance, where yes, you got to have the book smarts to get it done. But that also means high levels of conscientiousness in there too. Like you got to show up to class. You got to turn in your test on time. You got to write your paper. Like all this stuff is kind of like commingled in something like that. Well, when I think about intelligence, I think largely about fluid intelligence, problem solving, specifically abstract problem solving, like walking into a new airport. Oh my God. What's the Amsterdam airport? Stuttgart. And trying to find your way around, or trying to find the train that is somehow under the platform in Stuttgart, which I messed that up, by the way, and they got mad at me in Harlem because I didn't badge my ticket right. But to your point, all those things are commingled, but intelligence is pretty solid predictor of overall performance. Pretty robust anyway.
This is cool stuff, man. I appreciate you sharing it. However, I did hear a rumor that we have another article on rumors. You want to hit us?
Go there? You want to say that? We can go.
No, let's do it. Let's do it.
This is an interesting study. Like, we all love rumors, but we want to pass on good information, right? Right? But how do you test something like this? So in this study, they analyze people's ability to determine truth and pass it on through computer simulations. So they describe it as agents or dots on the screen, but essentially you have like an NPC, a non-player character on your left, giving you information, and your choice is to either pass it on to an NPC on your right or not. Right? That's essentially the task that these real life participants are getting given. And they also know that certain agents are not always truthful. Right. And we know these people in our lives that like are willing to pass on information that's faulty to us. So knowing this information, do you pass on the information off to the next person in line? And essentially what they found is people are pretty good about this determining whether information is good or not. But while most subjects did make an error, they showed a consistent bias towards including and oversharing information onto their next counterparts, because they want to, pass on information. And might I say, like, they determine truth by, it is like coin flips. So whether is it true or false, especially when it pass that long. And their goal was to maximize their overall score. You get a point if you pass on the truth down the line.
So are you saying that it's fun to share a rumor? Is that why they're doing it?
It is fun to share a rumor. I like a good rumor.
I like Fleetwood Mac Rumors. That was a good album. What do you think, Jennifer?
I thought one takeaway that stood out to me was the fact that they said people really like to overshare.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why it's really hard to rein in the spread of information and rumors, is because the human tendency is to want to overshare. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And thinking back to days before technology that allowed it so easy to share, I thought, yeah, it's actually pretty true. Like even in the days pre-internet, you're on your phone to your best friend every night wanting to share all the rumors you found out during the day. So there's I thought it was kind of that tie into human nature was really kind of cool.
Here's some more insights. When participants receive messages through different network configurations, like having a biased agent closer or further from them, it affected how they chose to share information. Specifically, messages were more likely to be believed and shared when they came through a chain of unbiased agents, people that they believed would tell the truth, than directly from a biased agent.
Well, we are unbiased agents, and I heard a rumor that PeopleInsight is the new hot people analytics platform for companies with 500 to 5,000 employees. So well done, and thank you for joining us today, Jennifer. I did want to make a quick kind of shout out. So there were some researchers, so previous guests on the podcast, Stephanie Murphy, Richard Rosenau, Andrew from Polynode, and I think one other researcher from NYU recently did a study on the O&A of the top people analytics influencers in the world. And I got one of those. And so I wanted to say thank you to our listeners for putting me in that study. And yeah, I appreciate it so much. So thank you. Thanks for doing that for everybody who's out there listening right now.
Oh, he's number one in the people analytics world.
Not number one. I was in the top 20.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. But Jennifer, you were a fantastic guest today. So before we let you go, Scott, any parting words for Jennifer?
Jennifer, fantastic talking with you. Where can folks find you if they want to reach out?
They can go to peopleinsight.com. And they can reach out via the website. There's a way to actually reach out to one of our team in marketing or sales.
Well, fantastic. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, a PeopleInsight podcast from Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Jennifer Hanniman from PeopleInsight, our first HR Tech Voices episode. Thanks for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank you guys so much. It's been great. I've had a great time.
Missing minerals? 99% of us are. Concentrate's Daily Mineral Powder helps restore what your body's missing, naturally supporting mood, energy, and immunity. Get yours now at traceminerals.com.